All
Outstanding.
yours, Brother Hopson.
Outstanding. Good evening, everyone. We're starting a little slow, but I will promise you that we'll pick up some steam. As was told, we just had a little bit of glitch just signing on, and so we'll make sure we make up. We're really excited about tonight, and thank you again for joining our Mega Success Express series. Already, you probably have heard presentations around the legal, around medicine, and thus far, it seems like we've gotten a great showing. Tonight, we're going to follow in that same tradition. We've got panelists tonight, um, renowned panelists that we're looking forward to introducing you tonight. I'll begin. I'm Rodney Hopson. I'm a professor of evaluation in the College of Education at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I'm excited to be here, graduate of the WHO, four-time WHO, and we'll leave it at that for now. But I'm also excited to bring and have joined Dean Cheryl Holcomb McCoy, Dean of the School of Education at American University. Maybe wave there, please, Cheryl. We have Psyche Williams Forson, Professor and Chair in the Department of American Studies at the University of Maryland. Thank you so much. And Derek Nottingham, Director of Research and Evaluation for Portsmouth Public Schools. And so we're really excited to have them. Thank you again to the producers, to the Success Series producers for making this happen. This is the education panel. And so I'll ask each of you three just to give us a little bit of introduction about yourself. Take a few minutes, 4 to 5 minutes maybe, and share with us a little bit about your brief recap of your journey since graduating. When you came out of UVA, what degrees did you receive, or any core life lessons? We'll take that as well, and where your path has taken. So if you could do that in that same order, beginning with you, Cheryl, and then Psyche, and then Derek, that'd be great.
Thank you, Rodney. You forgot to mention that you have two deltas on this panel. Kappa Rho at UVA, so just had to put that in there. And it's Omega Success, so we're all linked together. So I graduated from UVA undergraduate in 1986, and then again with my master's degree in 1989 with a master's degree in counselor education. And I'm originally from Hampton, Virginia, a Virginia native. And when I came to UVA, I had no desire to become an educator. Actually, I thought leaving high school that I would become an accountant, until I took Accounting 101 during my first year, and that proved to be not so successful. So I started searching for what I really wanted to do and what I have a passion for. And it was during one of the summer between my sophomore, my third year. It was really my second year and my third year that I worked for a Title I school in Newport News, Virginia. And I was a tutor for a group of second graders that turned my life around. It was a pivotal moment. And I loved watching them learn to read. These were about 7 or 8 second graders who were struggling with reading, and they were behind grade level. And so I spent the summer doing what we call high dosage tutoring now. It's a fancy word for tutoring more than 3 times a week. And I saw their progress and their ability to read, and the connection that I made with them over that summer. That really turned me on, and I came back and I applied to get into the education school, and it's history after that. I'll talk more about, my interest in mental health and why I went the counseling route, and my interest around cultural competence, anti-racism, and any type of work in which it leads us to some understanding and some type of solution to answering the longstanding education disparities that we see based on race and economics in our country. So that's sort of my story. I did get my doctorate degree from University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and in counseling and counselor education, another area of real passion for me. And it's been nice to be able to integrate education, K-12 education, higher education, and then the world of counseling and psychology, and bringing that all together. So I'll stop right there.
Okay, thank you, Soror. So thank you all for having me on this panel tonight. Like Cheryl, I never expected to go the education route. I'm from a family of educators, mom, dad, and now sisters as well. That was not my passion. I'm from a small rural area in Virginia as well, from Farmville, Virginia, and was taken in by the lure of the comm school presentation when Hope Wilson came to our county to present on UVA. I applied early decision. I only applied one place. And when I visited, UVA just stuck. Little did I know that the reason that it stuck is because of the work that I do now in cultural preservation, in history, and the material world and so forth. So when I left UVA, and I'll talk a bit more about this when we get to the question of what we learned while at UVA, got my BA in English, African American Studies, and Women's Studies, left UVA unemployed, went back to Farmville for several years, ended up in student affairs, working in Res Life and housing. Went into Connecticut for a couple of years doing that work. But while I was there, I had an internship or fellowship at a community college. And so I was teaching, which is something else I did. As soon as I came out of undergrad, I did get a job at Southside Virginia Community College teaching English. And I'll say more about that. But anyhow, that led me back to graduate school. And back then, you know, if you were not going forward into the professoriate to become a PhD, then you weren't going to get any assistance from the people who were advising you. So I was back to take my master's, and then I just kept going for the PhD. And so again, I'll share more about that later on in the broadcast.
Good evening, everyone. I've had similar journeys. When I first came to UVA, I too had no intentions of going into education. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer via the engineering program because that's, you know, my parents wanted me to go that route. Well, I did a paper on lawyers and realized that only a third of the people that get law degrees actually practice law. So I'm like, well, why would I take all those years to go to school just to not do what I went to school for? But of course, other things happened. And I guess before I decided what I was going to do, of course, I changed my major about 5 times and ended up having to take a year off. But came back and finished up everything. I finished in the summer of '85 with the BA in sociology. And upon leaving, I followed my girlfriend at the time, who went to Texas A&M. A professor that left UVA went there to chair the psychology department. So we went there with him. I worked in the, retail industry for a year, make ends meet. Then I decided, that wasn't for me because it wasn't making enough money. So I decided to go back to school. Got my master's in industrial organizational psychology. Did my internship with the city of Durham. Oh, and by the way, my wife is a graduate of UVA as well, and AKA from UVA. So one day maybe we had to plan a Linux panelist. But I finished all of that, and I guess once I finished my internship with the city of Durham in North Carolina, moved back home after deciding over one weekend. My wife and I, she was at Duke University doing her internship. We decided one day, said, well, let's move back home. We didn't have jobs. And all of our neighbors were like, well, what, are y'all running from the law? Because we decided on a Saturday, by the next Saturday, we were all loading up a U-Haul truck. And we moved back with no jobs, just went out on faith. And I started out substitute teaching. I had some people that took a liking to me. I could always be guaranteed to have a substitute job every day because they were principals at 2 different schools. So I was assured to be working every day. So one thing led to another. I got a long-term sub position. And then, of course, a position came available that said they were looking for someone with the thorough background and knowledge in statistics. I'm like, oh, they're looking for me because I had like 12, 13 hours in statistics. So I'm like, well, wow, I can imagine anyone in education with a thorough background in statistics. So I applied for that job. Of course, I didn't get it because it was earmarked for someone else. They didn't think nobody else would have that type of experience. And so when I came in, it kind of threw a monkey wrench into everything. I called back, I think a week later, said, well, I'm just calling to inquire about the job. I didn't hear back from you. So that person took me in under special assignment, doing research projects independently. And that person became my mentor. And one day she said, one day you'll probably be running this department. And 25 years later, I'm still here running the department. And that's my story.
Well, that's a good one, D. Now let me come back to you on this, because you said some things that make us wonder about the skills that you develop in the classroom that you found so critical to be able to transfer. So what skills did you find useful and critical that you never learned in the classroom? And how would you suggest someone build them while they're still undergrad or still in their process of lifelong learning?
Well, the thing that you don't learn in the classroom is how to relate and how to problem solve with the purpose. That you just have to, that comes through experience, and how to read people, because, in education, the higher you go, the more you're going to have to deal with politics. And I think I've survived like 7 different superintendents, and I'm still here. Normally when a new superintendent comes in, it comes with the new regime. But I'm like the last of the old regime. It's only like maybe 3 or 4 of us left. And see, I just like what I do, and my job is to protect the division and the superintendent. I don't do a job to, win friends. I'm here to, do the best job I can and do what's best for the kids in the system. But that kind of stuff you don't learn. That's just what you kind of develop as you come along. And once you learn yourself, and once you know yourself well, then you can pick and choose and make, the decisions that you need to make to move forward.
So those are self-awareness skills or
Self-awareness, definitely. And I would encourage individuals to always do inventories of yourself, personality inventories, characteristic inventories, know your leadership style, what type of people you like to work with and not work with, because depending on who you're working with can, change your whole career or turn you off from that career. So you have to be in charge, or you have to be the captain of your own ship.
Sounds like a poem. Sounds like a poem. Don't get us out here. Don't get us out here. Psych, let me come to you and maybe help with some of that. Best advice that you would have taken into your career? Were there things that UVA provided that were best for you, and how'd that happen for you?
Right. I'm gonna tie this into another question, I think, or maybe this is the question. One of the things that UVA taught me was how to handle failure. In my second year, as I said, I like Cheryl, took accounting. It was when I reached my second year, and I'll never forget it. I took a semester, I had econ, accounting 2, statistics 2, Latin, and an English course, which, first of all, advisory wise, that's ridiculous. I never should have had that load. But I did. And I failed everything except English. I got a C. And Rodney may or may not remember this, but I was coming out of Cabell Hall, and I ran into him, and I just walked up to him and put my head in his chest and just started crying, because I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And in, typical fashion, he's like, yeah, you'll be all right. And so, I was like, okay. And of course I was, but the thing that Derek said that resonates here is I had to take a quick inventory because it was the end of the semester and I had to figure out what I was going to do second semester of my second year. My GPA was in the tank. And the thing that hit me was the one course that I was successful in is the one thing I was running from, and that was English. And so I decided that the second year I would, of my second semester, my second year, I declared an English major, African-American studies, worked with then legendary Father Brown, who was one of few African-American faculty we had on campus. And I was already doing work in the Women's Center. So I said, well, let me do, this women's studies piece. And that was the first of many failures that I would have that led me to regroup and rethink, as Derek said, and reevaluate what my strengths were, right? We went on to found the Langston Hughes Literary Society, and we did some amazing things on campus with that. But then, when I graduated, I had no job. So here I am again. What am I going to do? I graduated from UVA with a major and 2 minors or concentrations. What am I going to do with this? And so what might appear to be failure could really be some time, right? And so I applied, like Derek, I applied for several different things. Some I got, some I didn't. Then the next thing that happened, my mom was like, okay, you're gonna have to get your own place because you have a different life. So here I am making like $160 a week to pay rent of like $150 a month. And then I ended up, applying for a job at Longwood College, which is now Longwood University. Didn't get it because it was destined for someone else, I found out, right? They had someone earmarked for that, but then that person was not successful. And so the next year they asked me to reapply. And I did. And that's what led me to Connecticut. And here's the thing. I was in Connecticut and I was tutoring, like Cheryl, I was tutoring undergrads in how to write papers. And I remember crystal clear, it hit me, Rod had come through, he was applying for Fulbright to Namibia, he was doing his thing, he was back and forth. I was like, what am I going to do? And then I said, while I was tutoring, I was like, I can't help people anymore because I don't know anymore, right? And so I was like, I have to go get another degree. This was right around the time when Alice Walker was publishing in Mass. So it was a huge watershed moment for Black women. So I applied to 3 places in the DMV, and I'll say this very quickly: University of Maryland, MA program, GW, and one other place. I got into none of them. So I got on a train and I came down and I had to meet with folks at each university. I ended up getting into Maryland. And here's what's funny, to Derek's point. Today I'm chair and professor of that same department that didn't admit me, right? So I had to figure out in all of that time how to persevere and what was my strength, right? And so sometimes it takes time. Their back is totally up against the wall because I had to leave Connecticut. My job there was not going well. And so it was out of desperation. It was also out of perseverance that I was like, no, you have to take me in this program because I can do cultural work. That I know. And so a lot of prayer, a lot of conflation of different things came together, and I ended up in grad school in '91 at the University of Maryland.
Oh, you once again, Psyche, you take us down memory lane, and your memory has always been better than mine. But you also remind me about another poem about meeting triumph and disaster the same. You've always struck me as one who could meet triumph and disaster just the same. And so thank you for your inspiration. I wanted to move from that, but to Cheryl, to you, about some things that affect, and specifically affect, women and Black women in higher education. So this may be a nice transition. You're a dean. There are not many Black women deans. We're so excited whenever we can say, well, we know that dean at American, she's our girl. And so can you just give us a little bit of idea of what opportunities there are as well as challenges that you face as a Black woman dean in higher education administration at a predominantly white institution?
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing a bit?
Yeah, I'm just struck. I mean, just listening to Derek and Psyche's stories, you know, I hear these stories so often for Black people, right? It's because our experiences with failure and being told that we're not supposed to be in certain spaces is the stories that we hear, right? That's not the same for our white counterparts. And I just want to put that out there. So it's a very different pathway to our success. And often it is met with, what did you say, Rodney? Triumph and chaos, or
Disaster.
disaster. Yeah, disaster. I mean, that is, so this notion of perseverance is something that has been ever present. And I think we share that, right? And to continue to persevere. I have to say, being a Black woman dean is, you know, is challenging. I can't put it any other way. It's, but it's not unlike being a Black woman, Black male, Latinx, whatever, in a position of perceived authority, right? And these unusual spaces where we are, where we're not supposed to be, you know, and that is, it plays mind tricks on you, because you sit down and you're at this table with all of these white men who have traditionally been deans and presidents and provosts of white institutions. And you ask yourself, am I really supposed to be there? You know, it's sort of the imposter syndrome kind of effect. And you have to work through that and negotiate and say, yes, I have every, I am worthy of being here. I should be here. And that takes extra energy. So it's tiring, but we persevere. I have to say, what has gotten me through, though, which is a skill that I didn't know I was developing at UVA. So all the folks, if there are any students out there, you're developing these skills when you don't even know you're developing them. And one of those skills, and besides perseverance and, you know, picking yourself back up, the resilience factors, it's the relationship building is so important. And finding those places where you're surrounded by people that love you, support you, and tell you that you're okay. I mean, when Psyche said, I could just see that image of her meeting you, Rodney, and putting her head on your shoulder and you telling her, you know, pick yourself back up, sis, let's go, right? Or saying, I'm gonna go over to Newcomb Hall, let's go and let's do this, you know. That in and of itself, those relationships are so important. Those relationships like that are what get me through. Sometimes I just have to call up my sister girlfriends and say, hey, this just happened. Could you believe what so-and-so and so said to me today? You know, and for a sister to say, yeah, I know that happened to me too, you know, it's okay, you're not crazy, has been the recipe for me being able to continue. And it is those relationships that are so important. So being a member of a sorority, being a member of a fraternity, finding that club that's right for you, that group of friends, they don't even have to be an organized group. It could just be your crew, right? Is so important, because that is what I find, those relationships are so important. The opportunities that I've had in my life to get to this, to be a dean, have come about because of relationships. Someone saying, hey, I think you can do this, right? When I couldn't see it in myself. So it was those relationships that gave me the courage to step out and say, I'll try this. So I just want to just put a plug in for relationship building. You know, you can't do it alone. Find your peeps and stay connected to them. Surround yourself with good people that that have your best interests at heart.
Rodney, I know we're on script, but I just wanted to echo what Cheryl said, because when I went to Connecticut, I knew absolutely no one. I'm not even sure why I was there, quite frankly, from Farmville to Danbury, Connecticut. But it was in that internship program, we were having orientation. I came out and there was a note on my car because I had one of the little Delta insignias. There was a bruh in the workshop with me. And he was like, you must be in this fellowship with me. And he was like, call me because I want to hook you up with a couple of sorors. We're still friends today, 25 years later. Those sisters are my lean on, as Cheryl said. So use the network as well. We're in it. You may as well use it. So I'm eternally grateful that he reached out and you know, actually helped get me grounded in a place where I didn't know anyone.
Let me stay with you, Psyche, and then move to Derek. if you don't mind, about a typical day. What's a typical day in the life? I think sometimes when we imagine careers, we think, okay, you know, as a professor, as a director in a school district, you do this. And so maybe you could share, what does a typical day look like? Again, remind us what you do, and then give us a bit. And as I do, just a reminder to everyone, please begin to start submitting your questions, your emojis. I see only one heart. Thank you so much, Vonda Dixon, a shout out.
All right,
Um,
Alliance,
you
sister.
see, you see. So please, feel free.
Yes, make it fun. So, or quadruple, right? Number 4. So anyhow, I'll say, let me just start this with the last 18 months have been hell for all of us. And they were certainly hell being in an administrative position in education. Trying to chair a department from afar, you know, and you've got all the kind of stuff that goes with all the administrative stuff. And I'm a single mom. And as to Cheryl's point about issues of mental health, which have come into my life late in life. So there's a lot of different challenges coming at one time. I quite frankly shared this with the group the other day. This is a very gendered question because though we all have those challenges, other factors can really offset your day. Whereas when I was single, when I was not parenting, I could pretty much have a predictable day. Those other factors very much offset my day, right? So it depends on where you are in your career. It depends on if you're partnered. It depends on so many different factors. But for me, quite frankly, I can't really tell you what's going to happen in my schedule tomorrow, right? Because it looks right now, it may look very empty. By the time I get up, one email can offset my entire day. A graduate student didn't get money, or they did get money, or an undergrad is battling a grade, and that could go on for a week or so. And as chair, those things may come to my faculty, but then they just completely, if they're not handled at that level, then they come to me. In addition to all of that, I was trying to complete a book during COVID and trying to get full professor, which I was successful at doing this past year. But I mean, geez, you know, thank you. It just, I mean, you know, there were days you just kind of wonder when does it end and what's the next step, right? We were talking about this as Cheryl said, I'm ready to retire after this, these last 2 years. I'm in my second year, second term of chairing. So I'm now in my 7th year with 3 more to go. And so it can be very unpredictable, but yet rewarding. I don't want it to all sound like it's doom and gloom. It can be very rewarding when you see your faculty pulling together new syllabi, new classes, and figuring out new and innovative ways to teach people. That is very engaging. It's very rewarding. But it has been rough, especially for those of us in the humanities who work in cultural studies, where we've had Black men die on our campus in the last 2 years. And then amidst all the other stuff that's going on politically. So it's very unpredictable, but it can have, again, its rewards and its failures, not to mention its personal challenges. To Cheryl's point about imposterism, I just had this conversation this week about feeling, now that I've reached this pinnacle, feeling like there's, you know, should I be here, you know? So it's all over the place, but it definitely has its rewards as well as its challenges.
I want to stay with you just for a minute, Psyche, if you don't mind, because I don't think that many people know what a chair of a department of American Studies does. I mean, it sounded a little bit like you heard in Cats, but just give us a better idea of what are those responsibilities? Is it budget? Is it personnel?
Yeah, it's all of that. So I won't take too long because I mean, you don't really know until you get there, right? And certainly Derek and Cheryl can speak to this because we all have these administrative positions, but you know, it's everything from supervising federal work study students to making sure that your faculty get tenure, which is the difference between them having a job for life, if you will, or not. And so this goes back to our earlier point about recognizing your skills. I write, you know, that's my strength. I write. So, you know, I have a couple of books. but I also have to write at the level of, we have seniors right now who are about to get scholarships. How do I write for them? Well, also you write smarter. I have the person who knows them best to write the letter, and then I come in and massage it. All right. So I'm not sitting up all night long trying to write a letter for undergrad I don't know and wish I did, but I'm like, you write it, let me massage it, add my voice and my tone to it. So it can be something like that, but it also can be trying to figure out how in the world my budget manager screwed the pooch and somehow, gave this person more money than she was supposed to, only to hear from the dean's office, you have a misappropriation of funds. I mean, so those things are very real. And then, for example, right now we're in the middle of 3 different searches: a faculty search and two staff positions. So that just, all of that kind of stuff just occupies and boggles the mind. So there's a lot of detritus in between that. But for the most part, you're an administrator, you're a counselor, you're a teacher, you're a faculty, you're an author, you're all of those things at one time, as you are trying to chair a department.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Cheryl, I'm going to ask you to take a look at that question that's coming from Aaliyah that's up there, but I want to also ask Derek. So Aaliyah's asking a question. Cheryl, I want to point it to you, but Derek, could you tell us a little bit about your day in the life?
My day today, can be no day is alike. And when I do my days, I have to do days of testing and days where I'm not testing, because with me, I'm an office of 3 people. I've lost a person that was solely responsible for testing. I've been without that person for 5 years. She retired. And
Bro, just remind us what your office responsibilities are as well. You said testing, just help us with that organizational diagram.
Any state testing comes through my office. Any evaluations come through my office. Any SOL testing comes through my office. I train all of the people in the division that administer the SOL tests. I train, I monitor, I do all the paperwork. I'm the liaison between the division and the school system. I go to the state meetings. I am the expert. I bring everything back to the division, and they trust that I'm taking care of them. Now, with that in mind, I don't even like the testing side. My expertise is evaluation. I'm a researcher, a statistician. So since my person retired, I'm doing 2 full-time jobs, because testing is full-time. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of detail type work. So you don't have time to do anything else. So I haven't been able to do any evaluations. So I'm like, well, you got to pick and choose. We have to do testing, that's state mandated, but you can't have both. You can't expect me to do testing and evaluation and research, because research is very time consuming. It takes time to plan, implement, and carry it out. So I used to pull all-nighters because I'm just a perfectionist and I want my job to be done correctly, and I don't want no ambiguity. But that has its drawbacks and rewards, because now I can sit back and not do a whole lot. I can rely on other people to help me out. But I've developed this camaraderie within the division. I can call on anyone at any school and they'll come in and help me out. But that's because of the way I operate. I'm not a micromanager. I let people do their job. I don't tell them how to do it. I give you a deadline. If you don't meet the deadline, then we have an issue. But I'm not going to tell you how to do it, because everybody doesn't do everything the same way. Just because you get to point B where you need to be a different way from what I would get there, that's okay. We still got the job done. That's all that matters. But that's why I say you have to know what type of individual you are, what type of leader, and you have to surround yourself with people like that. And that's going to make your job much easier. And so my day testing would be monitoring constantly, making sure the schools administer the test, making sure there's no breach in security. When there's a breach in security, do I need to investigate? Was there cheating taking place? Was it an accident, or was it truly someone breaching the security of the actual test. So that can be very time consuming. You have to interview students, interview staff. Um, and I let people know, if you tell me, if I know on the front end, I can protect you on the back end. But if you're doing something and you don't dial me in, I can't protect you. And I don't look good in orange and striped suits. So, I can only protect you if you let me know what's going on, because I'm the one that communicates with the state. I'm going to ease that burden, because if the state calls me and asks me, well, what's going on, Derek? And if I don't know, I can't say. But if you've already talked to me, I can go ahead and communicate with the state and let them know we're on top of it. Yeah, we've had this issue, but we're dealing with it. But that's the biggest thing. It can be very challenging, because you also have to deal with the school board, uh, that want to micromanage. But I report to the superintendent. So, that's that story. But they always want to come in and try to pull their weight too. So you have to, figure out who you're supposed to report to and what you're supposed to do, because you can't do everything.
Let me switch a bit. Let me switch a bit. I mean, I think that that the day in the life of, yeah, please,
No,
sir.
I just wanted to say, can I answer Aaliyah's question?
Yeah, I wanted to push to you. I wanted to just say, want to switch a little bit with day in a life and go to some specific questions that are being offered. Sometimes a day in a life, it's hard to really imagine what these folk and what we do. And so Derek and Psyche's presentation give you an idea of sometimes a bit of unexpected and sometimes a bit of expected. But Cheryl, please, I'd like for you to address Aaliyah's question. There's a question as well that focuses on, I see two questions from both Brother Kevin Best and also Brother Charles Bowers. I'm going to push those both to you, Psyche and Derek, but Cheryl, if you could take Aaliyah, that'd be great.
Yeah, because I really wanted to answer Aaliyah's question, because it really does get to the heart of, what, and it sort of dovetails on what Kevin's asking, what inspires us to get up and do this work.
Yeah.
And, Aaliyah was asking, what would I say to aspiring educators that find it difficult to pursue their passion for education because of the pushback, the negativity that surrounds a career in education? And I guess my answer would be to, push back the opposite way and say, why not do education? I mean, in particular now, where we're seeing a huge shortage of teachers, Black and brown teachers. We have students that are finishing school without having one Black teacher, and some clearly without any Black male teachers, Black or brown male teachers. We know that still students do better in school when they have teachers that look like them. And I am a child of the 70s. I came up in, it was up until 6th grade, I had all Black teachers. And I credit my ability to write and to be able to think and understand what it means to be Black in this country from many of those Black teachers that I had in the 70s. And so I think, there's a real critical reason why education should be a focus of a possible career. As we think about the murder of George Floyd, and we've been thinking about the inequities in the criminal justice system, health disparities based on race, the education disparities are directly linked to all of those things. And I always tell students, if you want to really change the community, change the world, then give back in some form of education. And so I think better now than ever would be to have a career in education. So I would push back and say, why not? This is my way of giving back. And whatever you do, do it well. So that's the key too. What inspires me is just what I just talked about. I want to see a change. And what inspires me comes from the gut of my gut around all of the wrongs that have been done that stem, from educational inequities. From Psyche and I both have fathers who went to high school in Prince Edward County, Virginia, where they closed schools so that Black students would not go to school with white kids. That is a part of the history, and that, the political aspects of education have lived on for a long time, and we have ignored that. And so my passion and my inspiration for getting up every day is I want to right some of the wrongs that have stemmed from education unevenness for so many years. So that's my story. That's what gets me going. And the work that we're doing in the School of Education, as a dean, I have this really wonderful opportunity to make decisions through an anti-racist lens. I have the authority to make decisions that are sometimes unpopular, that I know that my white colleagues would not do. And I love my job right now. I stay because I'm at the table and I can make a difference. If I'm not here, I don't know what those people would be saying. Sometimes, so, Psyche, sometimes it's like, and probably Derek too, it's like, I'm glad I'm here. Because I'm here, the conversation can sway a different way. We need more people of color at the table, creating new tables. But that's what keeps me going with this unique opportunity to make a difference and to create education programs that will attract students like Aaliyah that's on, that will help, students, Black and Brown students say, hey, I'm doing this education thing and I'm doing it well. I'm going to create something new and open those doors for them. So we need education leaders. We need more folks in education that are innovative, creative, brilliant, bright, all of those things.
And compassionate.
Compassionate.
I have to say that. I mean, one of the things, I just finished helping my daughter with her personal statement for her own application, and she wants to go into urban education because of her experiences in Prince George's County as a Black girl who was demonized and considered a problem. And no one took the time to consider maybe there was something else going on. Right. And as it turns out, there was. And we are fierce advocates over here for mental health. And we need you all, and we need you to have compassion, because there were some of the Black women, unfortunately, who told her she would never amount to anything and that she would end up in juvenile detention. Thankfully, my child, was raised by me. And so she, of course, pushed back on her own and got her own self together. But to that point, we have children who are about to hit our educational system who lived in cages for years. We have children whose parents, for better or for worse, did not take the vaccine and are now abandoned because, both parents are dead, and there's 7 of them, and they're probably coming out of the foster care system if a family member doesn't take them. Our foster care and adoption system is totally bursting at the seams. These children still need school and they need educators. I sat and listened to an educator, a white woman, say to my goddaughter, or say to someone in my goddaughter's class, you can't be on your screen in your bedroom. You have got to get out of your bedroom. That may have been the only place she could be, because if it was like me, there could be 4 people in your house at one time, all of them on Zoom. So we need Aaliyah, we need you. Kevin, your question is well placed and well asked, because those are the things that keep us fueled, right? Is to make sure that our Black and Brown children come out and have equal access, right? That was denied some of our parents, and not just equal access, but the best that there could possibly be. I live right now in Fairfax County, just 20 miles from where my child was going to school. And the difference in educational offerings between Northern Virginia and Prince George's County, which is one of the top wealthiest Black communities per capita income, is night and day. And it's atrocious. And I can get on a whole soapbox about the parents in PG County who choose to send their kids to other kinds of schools rather than fight the public school system. I understand it because I was one of those parents. And so I would just say, yes, we need you. And to Cheryl's point, why not? And it doesn't have to be it could also be homeschool, right? We need parents in homeschool. We need educators at every level, at higher ed, at secondary, at elementary. Catch them on those levels before they end up someplace they shouldn't be, in a pipeline.
And we need educators who are writing the books that our children read, right?
Yes.
I mean, so if you think about the aspects of literacy, you don't have to teach to be in education, right? To write the stories. I mean, here we are arguing about critical race theory. They want to throw all of the history out. They want to throw all that out. But that's beyond, I mean, that's craziness. But we do need educators who are able to write curriculum that for Black and Brown students.
Right.
And these stories to tell our stories, but that, you know, we need educators in every aspect of education in
Yeah.
K-12. So yeah, I think why not now, right? This is the
Right.
time to give back.
Right.
Do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, this next question is a question that is a question that's been asked across the Mega Success Series, but I see that Brother Charles Bowers is asking it as well. And then the general question is, what I know now that I wish I knew, right? He asks, what advice would you give to your younger self based on your experiences to date that might assist current students struggling with how to navigate their professional preferences?
Well, thinking about what we just talked about, I must say that I went to UVA thinking that I had to be a lawyer, a doctor. You know, there were these accountant, there were these lofty goals that were fed to me, not only by my parents, but, you know, my counselor at the school. Oh, you're good. You should be this, you know, and that is the pressure from these people. They want the best for you. And that's not to say it's not good advice. But I came not hearing what my passions really were until I had that experience, right? And the advice that I would give myself now is to listen to your heart and your gut to what it makes you, because I believe that if you are driven by something, you'll do it well, and you'll get up every morning loving what you're doing, right? I do believe that. It's so cliche-ish, but I believe it. And I wish I had, you know, I went through wanting to be a lawyer too. I did too, Derek. I was like all these things, because at UVA at that time in the 80s, we had this script. These were the things that, you know, you had to go out and I wish I had just been more open to explore. But I think I found my way. It wasn't direct, but I found my way to education.
Right.
That's where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, you weren't the only lawyer in this bona fide, interested, aspiring lawyer. I remember, Psyche, I was interested in law at one time.
Yeah.
And in this case, I actually, some situations, it's probably better to taste the thing as well that you might be interested in to see whether you're interested in. So I had after my first year, I had an internship in New York City with some high school mates. It's like, I don't know if you remember this, but I had that summer internship at Allen K, 233 Broadway, New York City. Well, for a young brother like me was getting a little bit of change from his mostly experience filing dockets and walking to INS didn't sound that interesting. Had I been interested, immigration, which was the place I was going to every day to file reports, and law might have been interesting, but it wasn't the thing for me. And so you taste it yourself and give it a try and see if that's your thing. It wasn't for me.
And I wanted to go to UVA because of Skinny Martin. I knew Skinny Martin's mother worked for my father. So he was the only one I knew went to UVA. And I really looked up to him. And that's why I went to UVA and chose UVA. But I didn't know nothing about UVA with the exception of Skinny Martin.
Bro, remind us who Skinny Martin is, because some of the younger people don't know Skinny Martin, bro.
Oh, man, you know, Skinny Martin. Was he on the first or the second line for Lambda Zeta?
Y'all,
You're talking bros now. Bro, he's not even known as skinny. He's not even known as skinny. We didn't even know him. I mean, bro, we
that's what we call him.
Like skinny. We don't even know him as skinny, bro. We wouldn't have even known.
That's what we called him at home, Skinny Martin.
Charles Bowers said it was the first line. He's
the
first line. Okay, first line. But he's the reason I came to UVA.
So you sometimes in these cases you find others who model a particular thing or show a particular thing and say, well, if he come from some place and he can do it, then maybe I can too.
That's right.
It could be a member of your family. It could be a member that became a member of your fraternity or sorority, a neighbor, a church member.
That's right.
And just to echo what Cheryl said and what also the others have said, when I went to visit UVA for that, what was it, Black Alumni Weekend or something like that, and I got on campus and walked around and heard Mr. Jefferson's story, which I knew was straight BS. I was like, yeah, this is where I want to be. And I didn't tap into that. And yet, that's the work that I do. How many times have I been back to Alderman to go into the archives, to do the work around enslaved people in Virginia, in Charlottesville, particularly the women who worked in the kitchens, because my work is in Black women in food. Tap into it. Something was calling me, something was haunting, right? As Avery Gordon said, there was a haunting in Charlottesville. There was a haunting at UVA that touched me. And I didn't realize it until 10 years later when I got to Maryland and started doing research and began to pull threads using literature, which, is always the basis of everything I do, including writing letters of recommendation, and popular culture. So it was that haunting that I didn't know to tap into. But I would say for the undergrads on the call, sit with yourself, which is a hard thing to do sometimes. Because you're running around, you got I got bras, got to mean sorry, got to mean this, yeah, oh, I'm enjoying this, I'm gonna do. Sit with yourself in the uncomfortable silence and ask yourself, what is it that's tugging, as Cheryl said, at your passion, at your heart? It may not be that road down the comm school. It may not be the law degree. It may not be the med school, the engineering, architecture, whatever, A school. It might be public policy. It could be English. It could be Spanish. Who knows? So I would just sit with yourself and ask, what's your passion?
Let me follow up another one in terms of, because I think there are sometimes folk who decide later to get other types of degrees with lifelong learning. Then there are clearly some here that represent the next generation of educators and leaders here in this. What's the biggest challenge and opportunity for them? I'm thinking about Dr. Lutheria Peters' young cousin. She said she's still in high school. I'm thinking about Aaliyah. What message do we give? What's challenge and opportunity do we give this next generation as well?
Don't stop dreaming. And, if you can find your passion early, the earlier you can find it, you'll never have to worry what's going to happen. Because when you find your passion, you don't have to worry about where your next meal is coming from, because everything's going to take care of itself. Because you're going to wake up the next, each morning because you love what you do. I mean, I love doing statistics. I think I've helped about it was a cohort of 9 individuals working on their PhDs. I did all of their data and helped them get through their program. I've even met with professors on some of those who questioned their data, and they brought me in to meet with their committee to speak on their behalf about their statistics. So yeah, if you follow your passion, you're gonna never go wrong.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I agree with everything Derek said. I think, that is key. I think we are at a crossroads right now in education, given the pandemic, the pivot to virtual learning. I hate this terminology, but we call it a racial reckoning that the country is having right now based on the summer of 2020. But I do think there are, out of all these, life-changing events, have come opportunities for new ideas. And I think new educators, aspiring educators, have an opportunity to think of new ways in which we can solve some of these old problems, right? And using technology. I mean, and actually, if you really think about it, people in education have said, oh, we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't change tests. We can't. Well, we had 2 years almost where we didn't use the SAT for college. God knows. I mean, look at that. I mean, College Board about to go out of business, right?
Mhm.
So it's like,
Mhm.
that is changing. So college admissions is changing. We said, oh, we can't possibly have virtual education for 2 days. We were all online,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Over a weekend. So there's so many opportunities. We can't say that anything is impossible, because right now, everything is possible. And I would like to see more Black and Brown educators think about new ideas that they can bring to the forefront and get funded to try new ways of doing things, new types of schools,
Mhm.
new types of curricula, right? New books.
Mhm.
So I would say that this is a great time to be in education because of the timing, that there are so many opportunities and no excuses anymore that we can't do
Right.
something. So
Yeah, I would echo what Cheryl said. Don't be afraid of what you don't know.
Right.
Really, don't be afraid of what you don't know. We all we all have those those experiences. Um, Search far and wide for different types of learning, different types of education. There's certificates you can get, there's minors you can take. There's lots of different ways to enter education. It doesn't always have to be the same road.
Right.
Um, and in closing, I think I would also say um, have multiple income streams. Just because you are an educator doesn't mean you have to stop writing, doesn't mean you have to stop speaking, doesn't mean you have to stop pursuing other things. They can all inform the work that you do. So even though it doesn't look the way that our experience looks, um, I think you can forge your own path. And again, just don't be afraid to go to close out with Zora Neale Hurston, for your tub to sit on its own bottom. Yeah, because every tub has to sit on its own bottom, and sometimes
Mhm.
that's the road that's less traveled.
Right.
D not,
I
do
can
you have any thoughts on that?
I concur with everything everybody said. This is a time to think outside the box. We don't really need schoolhouses anymore because education is international. It's global. We've touched on with the media. We don't need. Why are we still doing education the same way we did
Okay.
during World War
Mhm,
II? We're
mhm,
still using that same model. We don't need that model.
mhm,
you know, Education should be about teaching people to how to be self-learners.
mhm,
Teachers are supposed to be coaches. Teaching is an art form. You don't really teach, stand in front of the room and lecture kids. You want them to find their passion and you let them go their direction and you just kind of coach them along the way. That's
mhm,
what it's supposed to be. But, we got so many self-interests in education. It's the most political
mhm,
institution I think we have.
mhm.
that's true. That's
That's
true.
right.
I
There
think we're
are all
wrapping up.
kinds of, yeah, I just want to say there are all kinds of opportunities. Speaking from my institution, we have an online uh, EDD program for working professionals, leaders already in the field that want to get a doctorate that has it would be called a dissertation of practice. It is tailored for working professionals, and there are 2 residencies per year where you come to Washington, D.C. It is focused on anti-racism and ed policy and leadership. It's a wonderful opportunity for those who want to enter into the field of education too. We also have folks within the EDD program that have been working in other spaces, but want to, are really interested in leadership and ed policy work. So there are all kinds of different pathways now for second careers in education. And Rodney probably knows more than I do. There's just loads of them everywhere. But it is, I can't say enough about, it is time for us as Black and Brown people to step up and start thinking about ways in which we can educate our children better and to provide those spaces for our students to thrive.
Mhm,
So education is, I believe, is it.
No,
mhm.
thank you. No, thank you. I just wanted to say on behalf of the panelists, Cheryl, Derek, Psyche, thank you so much. I get a kick out of just having this moment with you. Your leadership, your ingenuity, your perseverance. You three in particular, I've always watched and wanted to blend more with you. But this opportunity for the group here, I think, has been absolutely beneficial. And I see a lot of folk in the audience that we recognize, but also folk that we don't recognize, maybe that had questions. We'll make ourselves available to you. I put my email in the chat in case you have some more specific questions. We'll make sure we get those to both Dean Holcomb McCoy, Professor Williams Forsman, Dr. Nottingham. Thank you all so much. Lambda Zeta, is there any final words for the group?
I think you guys did a wonderful job. Outstanding. Panelists, stay on. For those attendees who attended, thank you. Thank you for participating, and look out for our next session for the Omega Success Series.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Yep.
Panelists, I'll stop the recording now.